Bonjour everyone, and welcome back to Castelleline, the French football podcast with the accent. I'm your host, Jérémy Magan, and with me, Baptiste from Le Classique. How are you, Baptiste?
I'm great, Jeremy. Thank you for having me again, as ever.
I love the shirt. If you're watching this on YouTube, Baptiste representing France today, and for me the French shirt is on top there. Castelleline, the not the last episode, but the last episode of the season in Ligue 1, where we're going to talk, of course, about match day 38 and about the crazy weekend that just went by, and all the signings and all the drama in the capital and in other clubs as well. We are going to discuss, of course, in part one, if you're on the podcast, Mbappé, the new signing, the new contract, what it means for him, for Paris Saint-Germain, and maybe already the few things that are happening for Paris to try and make this signing really worth it, I guess, taking the momentum. And then in part two, we are going to go through the rest of the games of the week, maybe rather more what the impact of the rest of the games of the weekend are. Of course, it was a crazy multiplex, as we call it in France, all the games playing at once. With the 75th minute, the table was different than it was at the 90th minute. A lot of clubs happy, a lot of clubs unhappy. So we'll talk about the European race, but we'll also talk about the relegation and what it means next for Saint-Etienne, to name them, if they can still save themselves. So a very, very packed podcast, a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about. Of course, Mbappé and Paris is going to take a little bit of it. We're going to start straight away. Baptiste, PSG is champion. Your thread is actually great on Twitter. If anybody follows Baptiste on Le Classique Pod, go and have a look at the thread that he just did about Paris Saint-Germain on Monday, I would say. It was very informative, and it was very objective and very true. Mbappé has signed a new contract until 2025. It was, of course, the talk of the town for a year, for a season, intensified in the past couple of weeks. Finished, I guess, on Saturday morning. All the news outlets had been made aware that he was going to stay. He made the official announcement before the game on Saturday night, and then he did a little cherry on the top, scored a hat trick against Metz to celebrate. First off, your feeling about Mbappé staying at Paris Saint-Germain and not going to Real Madrid?
I feel with this whole situation, there's no nuance, right? It's either he's made the right decision, maybe for the wrong reasons, or he's made the totally wrong decision. And I think that's the whole difficulty of it all. I think objectively, you do get a sense that, Mbappé, he's from Paris, playing for PSG does mean something to him. And I think he's always said that. And I think even last year when he wanted to leave, and he was public about it, he said he wanted to leave a year before the end of this contract so Paris could get something in return. Right. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean he's a benevolent man who doesn't look after his own career. But I think there is a genuine affection there to start, which was always a good basis for PSG. I think the terms of this contract, which will be the subject of intense speculation, I assume, and nonsense in the media, are also absolutely amazing for him. I mean, a 3-year contract until 2025. That means that by the end of next season, if they haven't perked up, he's already putting pressure on them. And for me, he's acting very much like, I used a Michael Jordan comparison last time we spoke about Mbappé, so I'm going to use another NBA one, but it feels very much like he's acted like LeBron James in 2010, right? When he left Cleveland, he was superb on the court, and he just said, I'll make my decision at the end of the year. And then he moved to Miami and put him under intense pressure straight away by signing sort of 2 to 3 year contracts and pushing the general managers to do their best, effectively, to put a team around them. I think that's what Mbappe's done effectively. And that means that if he wants to leave even before 2025, he can put pressure. And if he wants to leave in 2025, we'll have the same saga, and he'll make even more money as a free agent. And the football landscape might have changed. You might have different clubs going after him. So I think he's obviously it's an obvious thing to say, but he's the big winner, and he's made a choice that is, in my mind, quite sensible, in all honesty. And that's not even looking at the fact he's obviously the undisputed leader of the squad now. But even in footballing terms, I mean, PSG have been very close in the Champions League. I know this season wasn't great, but they've done semi-finals, finals. They're very close, and he does want. I think there's something very attractive, even for his brand and for his ambition, to be the one who brings the Champions League to Paris. So it's a local boy done good, and I don't know why. Because of the whole. Well, I know why. It's because of the whole element of, PSG are this sports washing enterprise from Qatar, that people say he stayed for the money. Of course, he stayed partly for the money, but I think he's also stayed because he wants to have a long-lasting impact at a club that does mean something for him. And he had the whole leverage, and he played his cards right. That's the way I look at it.
The rumor mills was crazy, of course. Up to the contract, he was going to be the captain, the most paid player. He was going to decide who's the coach, who's the sporting director. He was going to get rid of Neymar and Messi and do everything on his own. A bit of it actually has been addressed since. I mean, first, yes, the sporting director is gone, Leonardo's gone, and potentially Luis Campos is on the way. We'll talk about this. But also in the press conference that he held earlier today with Nasser Al-Khelaifi, he's saying that he's not the captain. The captain is Marquinhos, and Marquinhos is a great captain, and he's happy that way. They didn't talk about money because Al-Khelaifi is saying that he has never talked about money, so he's not going to start now. And he is saying that he doesn't want to have a word on the transfer. He doesn't want to decide who's the coach. All he wants to do is play football and does what he does, and he wants to just be a football player. So he's got the communication down pat. Of course, a lot of the noise came because his decision was met with anger, disappointment, frustration, whatever you want, from Real Madrid fans, from La Liga fans, maybe not Barcelona, but maybe the other ones, just because everybody thought he was going there. And so to that effect, I had put earlier a little poll on Twitter asking, basically, is it the right choice or not? And so it's marginal, but yes wins it. You've kind of said it. He's got a chance to really build his brand in Paris and to be the leader. My point is, and I'm in the no camp. That's great what he's doing at Paris Saint-Germain. I'm not going to say he's done it all because he hasn't won the Champions League, but he was at a crossroads and he had a choice to make. He could either carry the burden of making Paris Saint-Germain a bigger club than they are, or he could have gone to Real Madrid and signed for a club that, no matter how big, no matter how strong, no matter how good he's going to be, he's still just going to be a player in a club that's bigger than him. We've seen it with Cristiano Ronaldo. The player never is bigger than Real Madrid. At Paris Saint-Germain, it feels like Mbappé is bigger than Paris. I mean, Leonardo is fired an hour and a half after Mbappé announced that he's staying. And I don't know how far you can progress if that's what you're doing, because if you're in an institution that has been failing is a harsh word, but that hasn't been performing to the highest of expectations in the past 10 years, and that is constantly repeating the mistakes again and again and again, and not putting the people in charge that will make the decisions to make your club bigger, I don't know where you progress, because your only progression will be what you know of something else, of what you heard of something else, but you're going to have to make it up. Whether if you go to Real Madrid, and Benzema is obviously the perfect example, and B, the guy who preaches this the most. You're going into a club that is made for success already, that is made with the history, the fans, all the titles, everybody down the line. I mean, you got Jorge Valdano on top of you. Are all better and bigger than, not than what you'll ever be, but at least they've shown with experience and with 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience, that's how you build a big club. So that's why, in my opinion, if he had gone to Real Madrid, he would have become, to quote a player that we both like, the best player but a different beast. And I think that would have been something that he would probably have convinced the rest of the world more that he's the best player in the world if he goes to Real Madrid and he's able to still be the best player of the team in a team like Real Madrid, win trophies or whatever. To win trophies, Liga, La Liga, same. There's maybe 2 clubs that are good and the rest are going to have to struggle because they don't have the financial power. But to be able to impose himself into a new club that is bigger than him, rather than staying in his comfort and saying that I'm staying here, but you need to give me a good coach, great players. Even if he says he doesn't say that, we know that that's probably what the conversion has been. That's why I was thinking, and that's why I said it several times on the pod. I thought that he was going to Real Madrid because I thought for his legacy, for his story, sure, the boyhood club is a good story, but for his own storytelling, I thought that was a better move for him to go to Real Madrid.
It's an interesting one because, do you want to be a trailblazer or not? I mean, he would be a true trailblazer if he brings Champions League glory to PSG. They've never won it. They're a club that's been in the ascendancy for a number of years, backed with unimaginable wealth, obviously, but so has Real Madrid over the last 40 or 50 years. I mean, they've had their favors and they've distorted the transfer market in their days. So, what's the bigger challenge? Is it going to an institution where, for a player like Mbappé, if he turns up at Real Madrid, he knows he's the best player already there. With all due respect to Benzema, he probably looks at it that way, Or is it, and so does he go with the comfort of the institution and the team finding the way through? Or is the bigger challenge staying at home, bringing a trophy that's never been won to his home club and pretty much doing it on his own? I think that's maybe the way he's looking at it. So I think there's something romantic that we still have about there are still these glorious clubs that are above and beyond any other club. If you put on the Real Madrid shirt, you're in the greatest category of football, of club football. But that's just romantic, right? I mean, it was, look at Barcelona 10 years ago. Barcelona was seen as, and truly so, and rightly so, if you put on the Barcelona shirt in 2010 and you brought to the club, you're probably one of the greatest players to play the game at the moment. Who wants to go to Barcelona now, apart from this romantic idea that you might be able to turn it around, right? So I mean, I don't know. Only he knows. I just know that in 3 years' time, he might very well end up at Real Madrid, and whatever they want to say, they'll swallow their pride if he's available in 3 years' time, and they'll sign him and they'll offer him even more money if his career continues in the same way. And I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. And even if you look at Real Madrid themselves, over the 180 minutes that they had this season against PSG, he was by far the best player on the pitch. That sounds criminal because Benzema rightly got all the plaudits and had 10 minutes of, glorious football and demonstrated incredible leadership throughout the 2 games. Like, that's never in doubt. But over the 180 minutes, I mean, there was every time Mbappé touched the ball on that pitch, Real Madrid defenders were crapping their pants and everybody thought something was going to happen. So he nearly single-handedly took them through that already. So it's I just think he set himself up to go there in 3 years' time if he wants to. And he might also see at the moment as, well, is the Real Madrid project right now that much better than the PSG project? Because Modric is getting on, Benzema is getting on. They're both defying father time, but they are getting on. I'm not sure who their successors are at that club. A lot of those, Toni Kroos is aging. A lot of these players are getting towards the end of their career. So why doesn't he wait a couple of years to go there when he'll have a better picture of what the project for that club is? It's aging players isn't at Real Madrid isn't that different from aging players at PSG the way he looks at it probably. So it's a difficult one. I think we can't. I think what's been forgotten is we can't really judge him because he makes his own mind and he has the right to make his own mind. And I don't necessarily think it's about the money because I'm pretty sure he would have had some considerable tax breaks in Spain and would be paid a bucket load of money and would make much more from his image rights. And I think he's also the kind of guy who knows that he's making a lot of money even from his brand outside of football. So for people who just take the short, I feel people take a shortcut when they say he stayed at PSG for the money. No, he hasn't. I don't think it might be as romantic as some would like it to be. And I'm not kidding myself that he's only stayed there because he loves Paris and he's got that ambition. But I think it was a genuine attraction to him. And ultimately now people are spitting on him for staying at a club, at a hometown club, when people would love players to stay at their hometown club. So it's I think it's all a bit confusing, and there's not a lot of nuance when ultimately he's a man who makes his own mind and has the leverage to do so, and he's just done so.
I think to your point there, this is what it is, right? There's no right or wrong decision. Speaking about the money, El Khalifi on that conference earlier today said that if he had gone to Real Madrid, he had made more money than if he had stayed in Paris Saint-Germain, which is, I'm sure regardless, it would have been a lot of money or a lot of money. And as we discussed a little bit offline before, Mbappé, he's set for life, bar any injury, even if he gets injured now. He's always going to make money for the rest of his career. This is what football has become. This is the player that he is. He is definitely, one of the best players in the game, if not the best right now. So he's up there. Back to that comfort challenge kind of situation. You said it. Real Madrid is maybe the comfortable place where they win titles, but also in the meantime, as you're saying, it's a team who's aging right now. So it would have had that double challenge, which is probably the hardest one to actually to try and take. Of they're winning with old player right now. They're winning, although everybody thought they were going to lose. There's a chance if they win against Liverpool this weekend that they get La Liga and the Champions League without Kylian Mbappé in their squad. He would have joined the team that has already won everything with aging players, and he would have been expected to do the same or better to get the Copa and the Super Cup and whatever it is in the middle, with maybe players that are a little bit less good, or he can stay home and try to do it with the sure trailblazer. But if he wins the Champions League next year and then it leaves, I don't know when is the next time Paris Saint-Germain win the Champions League. So he's not. I feel like in Paris it's going to take a lot of time and an actual commitment from him of 3, 4, 5, 6 years if he really wants to see this project becoming one of the biggest clubs in Europe and not a phase that would have lasted the time that Mbappé stayed. So I think both sides, the challenge is there. I agree that maybe the project, the sporting project, is in a better shape now in Paris because the talent is younger. Period.
Because he stayed.
and of course because he stayed, 100%. But I think there was the way I saw it basically is all his narrative from the beginning, the legacy, the best player in the world, he could have gone to Real Madrid and expanded this and added more trophy to his cabinet, and unfortunately for him, having a better shot at getting a Ballon d'Or because you're wearing the white shirt and not the PSG shirt. And instead he's trying to maybe go the hard way about his own legacy, because his own legacy is going to first build in France. And even if next year he wins the Champions League and Ligue 1 and the Coupe de France or whatever, people are going to say that he's done it in the easy league because that's the narrative right now. Whether if he had done that at Real Madrid, he would have gotten to stardom faster.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I think those two clubs, they're slightly different challenges, but in the same at the same time, it all boils down to the same. They don't care about their league; they just care about the Champions League.
That's true.
So, in that sense, your target remains the same, and nobody's gonna. I mean, I hate comparing leagues anyway, but if you're really telling me when you're looking at, and I know Villarreal were amazing, so there are obviously some very, very good teams in Spain, but that league isn't particularly exciting or bursting full of talent apart from the odd team. I mean, this is a weak Barcelona. This is an Atletico Madrid that is running out of rhythm slightly. Sevilla haven't looked great. Villarreal were the exception, and frankly, Real Madrid being in the final is a bit of an aberration when you look at some of their
Wait a
games,
minute.
right? So it's not. I don't think he's looked at it. Well, again, I don't know what he thinks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he looked at it and said, "The challenge isn't about going there, winning La Liga. Who cares about that? The challenge is about winning the Champions League." And all he's doing is giving himself a bit more time to do that at PSG, a club that has incredible resources, and so therefore can maybe turn things around very, very quickly, and should be able to normally if they were smart about it. And he's the figurehead, and there's something, like we said, there's an attractive challenge there, after which he can walk into the sunset and go anywhere else and actually turn up at, if and turn up at a club like Real Madrid or any other club and say, potentially, I've won the Champions League with my club. I'm already a living legend in my country. He is getting close to that anyway, because he's maybe the greatest player that we've had since Zidane, frankly speaking. And he's won the World Cup at 18. I mean, so this guy, he's defying all odds, breaking all records. So for him to turn down Real Madrid twice, because I think he already turned them down when he went to PSG the first time, isn't a surprise. And I appreciate the fact that this is someone backing himself in a way and saying nothing scares me. I'm the master of my own communications. I'm the master of my own story. And ultimately, I'll do it on the pitch. And to be fair, he's done it on the pitch ever since he's started professional football. So why should we doubt him? Oh, and sorry, one final piece. There's no doubt. I think there is no doubt that he would succeed anywhere he wants to go. I can't see. I've rarely been so sure about a player. He could walk into any side and play. It doesn't matter what style that side plays. He could walk into that side, into any league, and be the best player there. So everything's easy for him.
I agree, and I think he's also maybe to compare him to other players in recent days or years. So I should say, the only comparison that I think matter would be Messi or Ronaldo, because it's the talent backed up by the work and the humility, however you turn it. Mbappé is humble about how he wants to go about things. He's doing it right, whatever that means. And like you're saying, his communication is also straightforward. Like that press conference earlier, the journalists basically were, out for the juicy information and trying to get, what did you get to be able to stay in Paris, and why did you stay in Paris instead of going to Madrid? And all his answers were clear cut, and were smart, and were very in favor of Paris and himself, and not in any way, shape, or form wrong, basically. So look, at the end of the day, it's awesome that Mbappé is staying in Ligue 1. There's going to be more eyes in Ligue 1. Hopefully, it's going to motivate the other teams to actually try and level up, because they're going to need to be a little bit of level up. We're going to talk right now about the rest of what Paris Saint-Germain can do now that Mbappé is here. Great, you've signed your star player until 2025. 7 minutes later, you fired your sporting director, who supposedly was the guy who, in the first place, put you on the way of stardom and of being a big club, because he had all this network. Leonardo knew everyone, was able to convince anyone. Got Thiago Silva and Ibrahimovic back in the days, and it kept bringing very important players. Wasn't the main guy as far as the Mbappé deal, but would have still been happy with the deal, of course. Luis Campos is talked about. I've read that Ruben Amorim might be the coach, who's the coach at Sporting right now, and who has done basically nothing else than coaching Portuguese teams and playing for Portuguese teams and also for the Portugal national team, which would be a strange one. What does it take for Paris Saint-Germain to actually make the best of signing Mbappé? And I think we agree on what it takes. But what do you think it takes?
Takes competent football people to turn up and to be aligned on what they want to do going forward and to implicate their players within that project. So the first thing, Leonardo hasn't been sacked because Mbappe wants to get rid of him. Partly because of that, probably, but also because he's been a shocking director of football for about 5 years. And when people talk about the positive impact he had, that was signing Thiago Silva, Zlatan, Verratti, and Marquinhos in 2012, right? Whenever that was. Since then, I'm struggling to find a good signing, a good non-obvious signing that he made, right? On top of that, as a director of football, he completely gutted the youth team. Never gave people, never was desirous of giving those people a chance. And was a man of network, of trying to keep power within the club by the sound of it. So it's a good first step. I think the second step is taking all the football decisions out of Nasser Al-Khelaifi's hands. That would also be a good second step, because he's a starry-eyed amateur who just focuses on, who's the biggest name, what's the biggest brand, and is not somebody who's been involved in football necessarily. So is maybe making mistakes that you or I would make if we were in a similar position. But he's not. He cannot be the one making the decisions at the club. Otherwise, there's no point in having director of football. So I think that's the first step. Even looking off the pitch is giving a sort of an identity to the club again. That club is right in the middle of, is in Paris. The Parisian suburbs, we've talked about it before, have one of the biggest concentration of talents in the world. And so you've got to build that identity. You've got to give a sense of that club representing something rather than oil money and success. And you've got to make sure that the football people in your club believe in the same things and are given time. And I think that latter point is always going to be the problem, especially with Mbappe putting pressure. So before we even start looking at the team on the pitch, I think they need to know what they stand for, and getting rid of Leonardo is a good first step, because I don't think he stood for anything. And we'll see whether Luis Campos is brought into the club and whether the manager who joins him, because it sounds like Pochettino is a dead man walking, whether that new manager is also somebody who will want to work with Luis Campos and will be given time and will be given backing in a dressing room when there's an inevitable showdown with one player at some moment, because that was the problem as well, as Leonardo and Al-Khelaifi siding with the star players rather than with managers.
I think what you said about Mbappé signing only a 2-3 year contract fits into that. Like, he's putting pressure on Paris to make the right decisions now. Otherwise, he's just going to walk, giving them a bit of money, but it's still going to walk.
Yeah.
I think if you get Luis Campos, you buy yourself that, because Luis Campos is the guy that is going to only stay if the club is run the right way. He's not going to like side for BS, or at least in the past, it's shown that at any sign of things aren't run the right way, or something seems wrong, or something seems off, he just walks away. He just wants to bring good player to a squad. Recently, we've seen young players that he's selling more expensive, of course, at Lille, but then in Monaco, young players that came up to win titles. So if you get a guy like Luis Campos, I think you're getting him, telling him this is yours now, and do you, and da 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 da. The thing is, I don't know if he wants that, because he's definitely a glorified recruiter more than a sporting director. I don't mean that in a bad way. Glorified recruiter, I mean, it's just a very, very, very good recruiter. So you need to have a coach that will be backed up like you said, by the sporting director and by a high fee to let him do whatever he wants to do. And if that means that Messi and Neymar start 6 months on the bench, then it is what it is. There was a lot of chat about Zidane, and then Zidane said no eventually. But this is what you want, Zidane, Ancelotti. To be honest, I don't see many more. Like maybe
Don't say
Guardiola
Conte. Don't
is
say
one of them.
Conte.
Yeah, no, definitely not. You know what I mean? He's not in there. He has 75% of the brief, right? He has the maybe the hand on the team and the experience to be able to back himself up. But you want a football playing team, not a bus parked 24/7. In Paris, you can't have that. So it's only a few coaches that we know of will have the ability to manage down and up, because Zidane comes in and El Khalafi can't talk because he's got the emir in his pocket. Ancelotti comes in and he's able to explain every step of the way what needs to be done. I mean, that's why Ancelotti didn't stay in Paris to start with, because when he first arrived, there was nothing, and he as much as everybody else built this club up with the training grounds and with all the professional infrastructure around the club. But any coach who is serious about his job and who's coming in is going to want to put on, I'm exaggerating, but curfews and diets and, check in and check out certain times of the day and night to make sure that you are professional in everything that you're doing. And some players might not like that too much in Paris, at least from what we hear. But you need to be able to do this. You need to be able to have, El Khaifi, the Emir, and whoever the sporting director, to say, yes, that's the right thing to do. He doesn't play, which hasn't happened in the past. And despite all this conversation that supposedly Mbappé and El Khalifi have discussed about what they want, if in 1 month El Khalifi decides to put a coach in that he has trust and to tell him Messi and Neymar need to play because we're 3 months away from the World Cup, and I want them both to be ready from the World Cup because it's our World Cup, and I want one of the World Cup winners to be in my team, so we need to give those guys play time so they can be ready for that big tournament. Mbappé doesn't have the out yet. He has the out later. And I don't know that we're going to see that strong change just because Mbappé has signed a contract right now.
Yeah, I think the problem for PSG is that they need something transformational right now. I think it sounds crazy to say it when they've just won the title by 15 points and they've been a regular in the late knockout stages of the Champions League for the last 5 years, right? Maybe we need to take a step back and appreciate that this year success is cyclical and this year didn't happen for a variety of reasons. Maybe that's the way some people want to look at it. I think for people at the very top, they will want to look at something transformational. But if you're going in that direction, you need to have a lot of humility, because that means you start a new cycle and some things need to change. If you need to transform, that means some things aren't working and some things need to change. And like you've said, there's been a lot of noise coming out of PSG for a number of years of an overly powerful dressing room and of a certain number of players who don't have the right work ethic or professionalism. And I think we know which ones people are thinking of. They are, am I going to have initials? One is MV and the other one is just N.
He's the record man of title won in Ligue history.
Yeah, but Verratti and Neymar, for all their brilliance, are always injured, and you've got to question yourself. And they're now 29 and 30, and they haven't changed their ways. And the question that they need to ask themselves now, and for a lot of players, is: have these players got the right attitude and the right work ethic and the right values for what we want to bring to this club to go to this next hurdle? Appreciating that purging the side of that of the rotten elements, if I can put it that way, also means that you potentially leaving yourself open to the first year of that project not being as successful as you want it, because it doesn't happen overnight. So it's a super interesting crossroads that they're at, and like we said, they're under pressure from Mbappé, but again, I mean, Mbappé, he'll be 26 when his contract ends. He could very well sign a new 1-year contract or a 2-year contract if he feels the club is in a good direction. So the ball, the ball is always going to be in his court. He's never going to lose out. He's going to lose out, obviously, if change isn't happening. And I think we both agree change needs to happen. But he will still be the best player on the park, playing in big competitions and shining. So, that's the first step for that club, and that needs to happen at a high level. It's not. It hasn't even. We haven't even talked about the personal changes they need to make on the pitch, of which there are many. But it needs to happen at a high level, and it needs to be driven down into the club, and that's been the criticism about Al Khalifi and his way of management for nearly a decade now.
Indeed. To finish on Paris Saint-Germain, we had a couple of questions on Twitter. One of them was from Titer Van Gorten, and we've kind of answered it, but maybe there's something to it. Does the contract extension of Mbappé means he'll remain at PSG for the foreseeable future? I mean, he's contracted for 3 years, but I guess the question is he going to leave next season or the season after if the project hasn't worked? Or are we seeing a Totti style of commitment to a club, even though it's contract by contract? What's your thought?
I like we've said, he's in an ideal position, because if he's unhappy, he can start making noise, whilst knowing very well that no one wants to be the man known for selling Kylian Mbappe. It's like, especially in this day and age where there's just so much noise around football, that compared to what it would have been like when Juventus sold Zidane, for example, right? So I think he will stay for the foreseeable future. I think it's just they need to get their act in order very rapidly to get him to buy into a successful project. But could it be PSG's Totti? Yeah, why not?
I guess you'd hope so, right? It'll be great for Ligue 1. It'd be great, of course, great for Paris Saint-Germain. Yeah. And I think it'd definitely give Mbappé maybe that legacy that is craving and that he's always talking about. Another question that we had was from OM Leeds. OM Yorkshire is the at, and it's Stefan, I know him. Do Camara and Mbappé deals show that football is in trouble and need major reform to save competitiveness and equality? That's a loaded question.
Yeah, that is a big question. Football has evolved that way for the last 25 years. It's the days of clubs in quote unquote smaller leagues holding on to their best players are gone effectively. Look, the choice for Mbappe was, do I stay at my hometown club that's also a sports washing project, or do I go to this other monumental club that has also been involved in some dodgy matters over the last 50 years and has also got money that is of interesting that's come from interesting destinations, let's put it that way. And for Camara, it's a case of, do I want to stay at a club that's given me my start and is playing Champions League football, or do I want to challenge myself in another much more visible league where I'm probably being paid more money? And Aston Villa is a good stepping stone and is a club on the up. Either option is acceptable for both players. I think what I found interesting is that those players both ran down their contracts and made the decisions for themselves. And I've often wondered why more players, especially at such a young age, don't do that, because then you have all the leverage to influence your club as well if you want to stay. So I think that's maybe the direction that we're seeing. The whole fact that football is inequitable that's just part and parcel of the sport now, sadly. Otherwise, why would sovereign states decide to get involved in such a sport? So it's not the most joyous of answers, but I think it shows more a case of player power. And people might, in the Camara case, people might say, well, Marseille gave him a chance. Marseille gave him contracts, paid him well. This is how he repays them. I mean, he could have signed a 4-year contract and be sold next year. Where's the loyalty? The loyalty goes both ways. And that man has given them a decade of football, probably, even though he's quite young, of, sweat, tears, and blood. And he decides to go in a different direction. That would be acceptable in any other way of life. So
they try and sell him. They try and sell him at the 11th hour last year in the summer mercato. I think the damage was done last season between Marseille and Camara, and if anything, he also knows the club probably better than anyone, and he knows very well that next year it's only going to take 3 bad Champions League game and 1 bad game in the middle of it to lose a coach, lose a president, and see your car being stoned, etc. So he also knows how volatile Marseille supporters can be. And to be fair to Camara, if you're a player in his position, there are worse choices than signing for the club coached by Steven Gerrard. Like, what better mentor can you find in Premier League than Steven Gerrard as your coach to be able to get advice? So I'm kind of okay with that decision. I think the equitable part. You and me follow the NBA. Is that the future? Is that a I don't want to say that it's the Super League, because it's not. But it's finding an authority which is not a governmental authority. So maybe it's the UEFA, or maybe it's something else that regulates the market for everyone through salary cap, taxes. And if you want to go over the cap, be my guest. But then you're going to have to pay taxes, and those taxes are going to be given back to smaller teams. Is that maybe a way going forward? It'd be a nightmare to put through because you have different legislation and regulations in every country. But
yeah, I mean, we've seen that in rugby. You've got salary cap, for example. Obviously, in NBA, I've always thought it interesting that the NBA does that in the most pro-capitalist country in the world. That you have a salary cap. I've always found that quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, there is a sense that we're sort of sadly inevitably going towards a case of there are just a few big clubs, and that's what matters. Playing for one is big clubs, and those clubs don't even care about their leagues. They're just here to big European trophies. But that's been the case for Real Madrid and Barcelona for about 30 years, 40 years, that they don't really care about La Liga. It's a little bit sad. I think we also live in an era where people are always nostalgic about what was happening in the past, when things like that were already happening in the past. So I'm not quite sure. It's just a lot more visible now. And of course, you would need a dedicated, corruption-free international organization to do that. And if there's one sport where that is not going to happen, that is the sport that has given a World Cup to a pariah state now, and has changed its World Cup calendar for an old country that's just paid everyone off. So, the hope is there that some of the main actors decide to do something about it, but it can only be a hope. I don't see that happening. And it's too big a sport. It makes too much money. And for the players, why are you, a footballer's career is very short at the high level, and you're not prepared for post playing career. So why are we limiting these people's ability to make a shit ton of money? That's the way I would look at it. If I were them, that's the way I would look at it.
It would need to be a big crisis for this to happen, I think. And I think La Liga has put the salary cap right now because they almost lost Real Madrid and Barcelona to crippling debt. But yeah, it would need to take, say, PSG having a bad season and Qatar deciding to just wash their hand off the club for, I think, something to happen where they decide to regulate that. Because I think in the NBA, the only reason why it's regulated is because they don't want to go through the hustle of having to inject money into a club. They want to make sure the clubs don't spend more money than what they should.
But just give it. I mean, just these are also wealthy people pumping a lot of money into clubs. At one point, they get tired.
Sure.
Let's see what happens when when Man City, Newcastle, PSG, all those clubs, people decide to stop pumping the money in. Or, Man United, when they keep failing to make the Champions League and they have to reimburse their own debt that their owners incurred on the club. We're going to see that at a lower level with Burnley this summer, I think, in the Premier League. But there are tons of clubs in that situation, and until it becomes a really, really big club, then nobody's going to care.
Well, Bordeaux's the same. They have to add. I think it was 20 or 30 million right now if they want to be able to even stay in Ligue 2. So yeah, I think we see that. We see that everywhere. Look, I said it several times as well. I thought Qatar was going to walk out after the World Cup, but signing Mbappé until 2025 might mean that they're staying. Otherwise, they're leaving a nice gift to the next owner with Mbappé, both sportively and financially. All right, that's probably the end of our part one and talking about Mbappé and Paris Saint-Germain. And thank you, anybody who had questions. There's more questions coming in the part two. And in part two, we're going to talk, of course, about Ligue 1 and what happened this weekend. It was match day 38. Baptiste, it was the last one of the season. There was a few things that needed to be worked out. Lens, Monaco, and Marseille, Strasbourg were, of course, under the spotlight. Lille, Rennes was up there as well to see who was going to be able to get the European spot. Nice was traveling to Reims. And then at the bottom of the table, Metz, who was traveling to Paris Saint-Germain, we mentioned it, they lost 5-0. And Saint-Etienne, who was going to Nantes, were the two teams trying to fight to get to the relegation playoff. We're going to focus on the top of the table first. So we're going to go down the table. It's no surprise. Everybody must have seen the results. Marseille finishes the season second on the table. The game itself against Strasbourg, we both watched it, was a very good game of football where I think it could have gone either way until Marseille scores the second goal. Strasbourg has the chances to go back into the game, and Strasbourg was in it to win it because they had a chance to go into European football as well. The Velodrome was incandescent, and then there's that end of the game where Marseille is 2-0 up. It looks like the players don't know that they can push to score 3 more goals, and maybe they can still make it to the Champions League even if Monaco wins. 1 goal, 2 goals. Now it's 4-0, and it's the last minute of the game. There's a ball into the middle of the box, hits a hand. The player in 1 minute go from chasing Stéphanie Frappard down the field to ask her to give a penalty to hearing that in Lens, Ganago has scored and the pitch is half invaded, and then end of the game, and Marseille is second. For the little story, Stéphanie Frappard did say that she was talking to VAR while things went down, and that they were most likely going to come back to that penalty. So Marseille would have given the opportunity to score that 5th goal that could have put them ahead of Monaco, regardless of Lens scoring that goal. But I'm sure there must have been a fair few Marseille fans with the Ganago shirts on their shoulder on Sunday. What did you think about this whole mayhem at the Velodrome?
Well, like you said, first of all, the atmosphere was insane. I mean, you could tell that just watching it on the screen. It's I mean, you know that better than I do, but Marseille is fiery. And
when it goes well.
And just a wonderful atmosphere. We saw that in the Conference League against Feyenoord already, but I mean, the whole of Marseille was ready for this, and the players didn't disappoint. And fair play to them. They played on the front foot straight away. Some gaps were open a little bit, as you said. It was quite even, but they drove forward. They were in there for the win, and they well deserved it. And I think they deserved, in my view, they deserve second place for the season they've been having. They have been the best of the rest. They've had some little blips, but they've probably been the most consistent side apart from PSG. They've also had a clear identity within their team, and some of it, certainly at the start of the season, some of it didn't necessarily work all the time, but you could tell there was a strategy put in place. Everybody wanted to play the right way. Everyone wanted to play the Sampaoli way. And it's always nice to see, the hard work of of a manager and his players actually working out, because they do play. I quite like the way they play. They play the right way. They just need to be more cutthroat going forward. But you know, from their box to the opposition box, they play some of the best football in France, and he's developed a lot of good good players there. So I was happy for Marseille. It is a big club. To have the Velodrome in the Champions League is something. I'm hoping they will do better than the last 10 years that they've had in the
Yeah, me both.
competition. But they, yeah, like I said, everybody seemed to be in it together this year for Marseille, and that's rare, and that needs to be highlighted, and that's probably why they finished second.
You could see at the end of the game, right, Guendouzi running throughout Sampaoli, Payet, and Saliba, who were, of course,
Yeah.
in the stands celebrating with Longoria and McCourt even, and then everybody coming onto the pitch and celebrating almost like it was a title. I agree with what you said. The team both, drunk the Kool-Aid, bought Sampaoli's message and lived by it. They have to do the same thing next year to be able to actually get to where we want them to get. But like you said, last time they were in Champions League, they ended up with 5 losses or 6 losses in as many games, and so they need to be able to show another face for themselves. Dimitri Payet very politely threw the pressure on his board by saying that he said something along the lines of, we've done the job, us the players on the pitch.
Yeah.
We've done what we had to do. We're supposed to get us to Champions League. We are there now. Now we just hope that the work is going to be done in the summer as well while we're on holidays, to make sure that we can come back stronger next year, which is a very polite way to say, get us the player that we need to compete at that level. To be fair, though, if you say Saliba doesn't stay, you really need a strong centre back, a left back, a keeper, a striker. The striker, of course, is the story. If you're lucky, you're selling Milik for enough money that you can just replace him, or you can just maybe you can actually try and use Milik.
Yeah, I mean, there's still 4 players.
They changed 8 last year. What's 4?
I mean, and there are some players that have played important roles, like Cengiz Ünder, who was only on loan. Recently, I mean, Harriet, he can be a bit hit and miss, but towards the end of the season, he played a big role. So I think they need to make a lot of decisions on a lot of players. The Saliba thing, I can't see that happening, and I don't understand why Arsenal want to sell him, and I can't quite picture them actually selling Saliba. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't fit with the.
What does he say that OM as well? Like, it's if he did say that, that's a weird communication.
Well, I think we need, with what Saliba himself has said. Is that what you mean? I think for that, I think we need to read the actual interview in French to see how it's been translated. but I think if he said, yeah, I would love to be back here and I would love to play the Champions League, what's wrong with that? That doesn't mean if he goes back to Arsenal and they tell him, you know what, you're going to play most of the games as a starter, or there's going to be a heavy competition between 3 players for the 2 centre back spots. Why? I mean, he could still want to stay at Arsenal. I have to say I struggle with that sense that he's gonna be leaving Arsenal, because I also think if I were him, I would want to show that I'm good enough to go there and dominate, and he certainly is. So, but I mean, that's just me. I could be wrong. I was wrong right on the Mbappé thing, but apart from that, but I think yes, the good thing for Marseille is that they have like I said, they have an identity. They know what players they need. I don't know which ones they'll be able to get, but they know the profiles of the players they need, and they've got a Champions League football living in Marseille. Those are exciting attributes to offer to a player, and playing in Ligue 1, which has Mbappé staying and is going to continue to have more visibility, I think is an attractive proposition. They obviously need to find a striker, and they need to find a striker that fits the way they want to play, because Milik is a good striker. Of that, I have no doubt. But he has poor attitude and he doesn't play. He feasts on crosses and balls into the box, and that's just not the way they play. He's just not a good fit. And Bakambu is 31 and average, so they, I think in a lot of areas they have very good players. I was very impressed with Gerson towards the end of the season. I thought he was excellent. Guendouzi is infuriating if you don't support Marseille, but he's a hell of a player. And they have a lot of. I thought Rongier this season was absolutely awesome.
Very
I think
smart.
he's probably been one of their best and most consistent players. So they've got a lot of positives to go forward. But as you said, with Marseille, you just need a slightly underwhelming transfer window and some poor results at the start of the season, and it all unravels. So it'll be an exciting season next year, but they deserved, in my view, to finish second.
I think for Saliba, it would just take maybe an interview from Mikel Arteta saying, yes, I trust him, for him to come back to Arsenal. But I think there might be a bit of from Saliba's side, I would think that there may be a bit of feeling that the coach doesn't want me in Arsenal, and maybe that's also something that could be hard for him.
Awesome positioning. I mean, if you're him, you're going, I've just won French Young Player of the Year and I've led my team to Champions League. Why am I not dethroning Gabriel Magalhaes? That's probably the way he's, that's some messaging that's sent to his coach, but I still don't see that as, and I see rumors that they'd be asking for 30 million euros. Why would you be asking for so little?
Yeah, right.
But
if the Real Madrid was on him, it'd be 60. So yeah, might as well just ask for that money, because you could have that money for a player like him. He's as good as Upamecano and Koundé, which are the players of his age, also knocking at the door of the French national team, right?
Yeah.
The the team that was unfortunate in that crazy end of night was Monaco. Monaco, who ended up the season like a rocket, 10-game undefeated, 9 wins in a row, and chill this weekend. They thought they had done the job by winning 2-1 against Lens, and then they conceded at the end with Badiashile unable to clear the ball. It's a sad goal for Monaco after all they've done. That said, and I feel like we would say that for Monaco every season, because their second part of the season is so good, they look like the team most likely again to challenge Paris Saint-Germain next year, because they look like they have the foundation, they have the player. They have a player like Wissam Ben Yedder that it doesn't matter if you play him 5 or 90 minutes, he's going to end up into the top of the goal scoring ladder. They have that little project going on with Philippe Clément, of course, and with his name is gone now. He's the sporting director, Paul Mitchell, sorry, who are working towards making it a strong club. There's a bit of money coming in, most likely with Tchouaméni being sold either to Liverpool or Real Madrid. There was a bit of a leaning towards Liverpool in the past 24-48 hours. Monaco has had a complicated start of the season, mainly maybe because of the Champions League exit against Shakhtar Donetsk. They had a fantastic final run, but they are back into that third spot. They're going to have to start the season early. How much of the factor might that be for next season? And also, what did you think about Monaco being there at the end when obviously no one saw them here when we saw the first start of the season?
Yeah, I mean, the Tchouaméni question is gonna dictate what they can do on the transfer market, I think. And again, I've talked about Marseille, the Velodrome being attractive. You can't say that about the Louis II, but the lack of taxes at Monaco and the lifestyle,
the taxes are attractive.
is attractive, and the fact that they commit to playing young players and putting in a shop window, that is also attractive. I think they've got a good group of players. They have, although I would like to see Sofiane Diop play a bit more, but it sounds like he's struggling a bit under what Philippe Clément is asking for. And Clément needs to be given some credit. I mean, early on in his tenure, it did look like from watching them play, you could tell that there was something there. You couldn't quite put your finger on it, but you could tell they just looked more organized. They just looked like they played in a particular way. Again, I think if you if you look at a side, you watch them play and you go, okay, I know what they're going for. That is always a plus, and you could see that with Philippe Clement. The results weren't following straight at the start, but he just had to settle on his starting 11, and he didn't deviate much from his starting 11, which is also something to think about for next season if they're going to have Champions League football on top of Ligue 1. And so it's funny how things change, because when they got rid of Kovac, there was a lot of criticism. I have to say, I watched Monaco play last year. I know they had a decent season, but they also played in a way that was completely open and showed a complete lack of tactical ability, was the way I saw it. But they to be fair to Kovac, they were getting results, but it was more of the 4-3 variety than a solid 2-0 compared to Clement. So I think he's brought a bit of stability. We'll see how he's backed in the summer. It is just funny that with Monaco they pipped Rennes to the spot, right? And it's felt like much like last season, but it felt like another roller coaster for Monaco, and you don't know whether they're just full of confidence and they were cruising, and they'll pick themselves up again when they have obstacles in their way. Are they sort of fair weather players, like some people would say, or they play very well when everything goes well, but they don't when there are obstacles? Whilst Rennes, I thought, maybe in my book, maybe deserved, if you look at their whole season, deserved to finish third rather than Monaco, and they always played the right way. So, so you can't discount the work Philippe Clement's done. He's obviously been a breath of fresh air for that club, but instability is always, right out the window for, right next door for Monaco. So we'll see what they do.
Those two results, Monaco and Marseille, meant that Strasbourg and Lens were out of the race for Europe, and so fourth and fifth place would be fought by Rennes and Nice. Of course, with Monaco and Marseille getting the result, Rennes wasn't able to get back to them, even if they had won. But Rennes has actually struggled to get that result in Lille. Lille had scored first. Rennes came back, of course, by Bourigeaud. And then Timothy Weah scores at the 88th minute, and Guirassy is the hero for Rennes at the 93rd. What it meant on the other sides in Reims, where Nice was playing, Nice was down 2 goals by Ekitike and Doumbia in the first 20 minutes. And then a crazy hat-trick by Andy Delors at the 75th, 77th, and 82nd minute means the emotional roller coaster for Galtier must have been, you're down 2-0, you're up 3-2, it's 1-1 on the other side, and so you're still not in Europa League. And then Timothy Weah scores for Lille. So at that stage, Nice is in the Europa League and not in the conference. And at the 93rd minute, Rennes finally equalizes and gets the fourth spot. I mean, I think there's also images that Galtier thinks that Nice is in Europa League and celebrates with his staff before he's being told, wait, they've scored. We're actually fifth, which is not bad, the Conference League. But then Galtier, rightfully so or not, said in the press conference that he's still fuming over that point loss against with that game against Marseille and the pitch invasion. He basically, very indirectly, but at least I read it that way, blamed his own supporter for the way they've supported the team and for what they costed the team. 2 games that were crazy in their own right, and then we end up having Rennes in 4th and Nice in 5th. You said that you thought Rennes was supposed to be higher. Do you think Nice deserved to be higher? They were second for more than half of the season.
It's a difficult one. I think for Nice, it's year 1 of the Galtier project. I think that's the way I would look at it. So he's a man with a super successful track record. I mean, what he did at Saint-Etienne compared to where they are now speaks volumes. Even if you weren't to look at his time in Lille, which was even more amazing, but just his time at Saint-Etienne and the consistency that they had was impressive. So he's a man with a track record of delivering. Were Nice one of the top 3 sides in the country? No, at no point were they that. So have they finished at the right place? Yes. Do I expect them to grow? Yes, because he's set up the basis for the team. They're defensively solid. They played a system that he wants them to play. He could be more imaginative, but he might want to bring in his own players, and he might. That's why there's a bit of a fight for influence at the club at the moment, by all accounts. So I think they deserve to be fifth because they have been quite consistent this season. The criticism that's been valid is that they don't play as expansive as they could, and he's even admitted himself that he's misused Amin Gouiri, for example, towards during the second half of the season. So some mistakes have been made. Some growth is still expected. Some players haven't worked out. Justin Kluivert can head back to his parent club now, having left no trace of any success at that club. And Calvin Stengs needs to buckle up, otherwise he's going to go pretty soon, as will Kasper Dolberg if he doesn't grow a backbone at some point. But there's still some players there who have talent, and more importantly, as we've seen over the last few weeks, is those players play for Galtier. I mean, penultimate game of the season, 2-0 down at halftime against Saint-Etienne. They steamrolled over them in the second half. Same on the last day of season. Maybe Reims were a little bit already on holidays, which would be understandable. But the way, you talked about the way Guendouzi ran to Sampaoli after the final whistle, the way Andy Delors ran to Galtier after each goal, I think said a lot as well. So his players like him. I think he's a proven manager at a club that has resources and that can challenge. It's breaking that glass. It's not a glass ceiling, but I kind of see them in the same way as Everton under David Moyes or Aston Villa under Martin O'Neill were. They made smart signings. They had good managers, and their players liked playing for that manager. It was just a question of actually just getting there over time and staying there. That's the difficult part, and that's going to be the difficulty for Nice, despite good resources.
Yeah, you would think Ange Delors is happy. He didn't get the easiest, the best start of season with the story with Algeria and just on the pitch he wasn't answering. So the end of the season that he's given Nice and that Nice has given him, definitely makes it worthwhile. Nice is also, obviously going through a bit of issues in the background now. You mentioned the power struggle, but also Ineos out of the blue had put out a bid for Chelsea, and that can't help the club looking to the future. If you're a coach and you're being told that your owner is about to buy a club that will make you basically a feeder club, it's also mixed messages sent, I think, everywhere in there, and again, that's to me another situation of the trials and tribulations of new owners going into football and not understanding the powers at play, the passion, the dynamics of what it is to run a club, and the passion of the people that are following the club, sure, but also the people that are working at the club, because the last thing I think Galtier wants is a repeat of Lille and just money thrown out the club without any really thoughts of what is going to be on the field, and that's where he's going to keep his job. So he wants that to be clear. There's been, and I'm sure it's not going to happen, but there's a reason why there's been rumors that Galtier might leave already. It's because he would like things to be better, I'm sure, and he would like to have a strong person over him to back him up, because he has the track record speaks for him, but I think his mentality, he's got that he thinks, or he has figured it out, like how it's supposed to run, what you're supposed to do to be successful, etc. So he basically wants that backup, right? We'll see if they can give him all this and put him there. So that's our top five, right? Paris Saint-Germain, of course, was champion with 86 points. Marseille second, 71. Still second of the league without getting 2 points per game. Monaco third with 69 points. Rennes fourth, 66, and Nice fifth, 66, with Nantes winning the Coupe de France. That's Paris and Marseille in Champions League, Monaco in the preliminary round of Champions League, Rennes and Nantes in the Europa League, and Nice in the Europa Conference League. But of course, there are also preliminary rounds to be able to get there. So that's our top of the table sorted, and there will be a few episodes during the summer where we're going to talk about each club. You and me will do our draft the same way we did it halfway through the season, of course. But there will be some episodes where we talk about what those clubs have done, and we'll develop a little bit more. Before that, let's look at the bottom of the table now. There was only one story basically for match day 38. Who was going to make it to the relegation playoff? Was it Metz or Saint-Etienne? It was almost a story of who's going to lose by less goals because they were both playing against teams that supposedly are better than them. Metz in Paris, and they lost 5-0, and Saint-Etienne and Nantes. And Saint-Etienne was able to cling on to the points, getting an equalizer at the 79th minute by the experienced Romain Amouma, which means a lot for the club, the fans. I feel like they could have saved themselves a long time ago, but they finally put themselves onto a relegation playoff stand. They're about to play Auxerre. First, Baptiste, what do you think about that Saint-Etienne Metz story at the end? Do you think Metz maybe deserve to actually be the one on the relegation playoff, and Saint-Etienne are very lucky to get there eventually? And then I'll quickly talk, if in case you're unaware of how good Auxerre is under Jean-Marc Furlan.
As to whether Metz or Saint-Etienne, I mean, they've both been terribly poor this season. I mean, Bordeaux's made them look good, but they've been abysmal, frankly, both sides. I think Saint-Etienne under Duprat have shown a bit more. They have shown a fighting spirit that's there. They're very, very limited, that side, but they go in there with heart, with endeavor. They don't give up. Metz has had a different feel to their season. They've just been so meh offensively, attacking wise. They've just had no ambition there, and that's been disappointing because they were pretty decent last year.
Exactly.
But they just seem to have retreated with a different mindset this year. So, can you say who deserved more to ultimately be in the playoff? I don't know. I just know that if we are to go on the last impression given by those clubs, then Metz getting spanked 5-0 at the Parc des Princes when their opponent were in holiday mode and were playing five-a-side football effectively, and there was no heart there. I think that speaks volumes compared to Saint-Etienne, who kept going, admittedly against an inferior opponent than PSG, right? That's absolutely fair, but they kept going, and you saw from Hamouma's reaction when he scored, what it meant to all of them at the final whistle. So it feels fair that it's Saint-Etienne. I still expect them to go down. And I kind of feel like, just the same as with Bordeaux, for Saint-Etienne to go down wouldn't be such a bad thing for Saint-Etienne. They need Cayazo and Romeyer. That needs to end. They need new blood. They need new thinking. They need a new cycle. And I just feel like they're one of those clubs that if they stay up, that cycle is not going to start, and you're just delaying the inevitable. So I love Saint-Etienne. I think it's a great club. It's a iconic shirt, one of the best atmospheres in French football. But they're at the end of the cycle, and I just don't know whether the creativity, imagination, and desire is there for that to happen, with or without Duprat. I mean, I would say the same thing without him. So yeah,
I agree. For Saint-Etienne, I think Metz, for the last game, they probably had the worst last game against Paris Saint-Germain you can ever had. It was either Mbappé was saying, "I'm staying," and he's going to put on the show, or he was saying, "I'm going,"
and he's
going to put on the show. So I think Metz, regardless, unfortunately for them, it was about trying to keep conceding only 3, not more. That was the story for them, right?
But to be fair, I mean, That's absolutely true. I mean, it was going to be tricky anyway, but I think if you look at some of the goals they conceded,
Yeah,
the players' body language. I mean, I know. I mean, and I know it's easy for me to say that when I'm not the man 3-0 down at the Parc des Princes in the last game of the season when you've scored, I don't know, 25 goals all season and you know mathematically you're dead, right? But um that's what surprised me is they just seem to give up, and that's surprising for an Antonetti side as well. So, like I said, if you're looking, if you're basing, if I'm making my assessment based on the last impression I got from those teams, then they deserve to go down.
yeah, exactly. And we've seen teams less good than Paris Saint-Germain several times, really causing them issues, mess themselves in the first game at Saint-Symphorien. Only lost to Paris Saint-Germain because Hakimi scored the 95th minute. So there would have been something to do, but yeah, it didn't look going well for him. Saint-Etienne will be playing Auxerre in the relegation playoff. Auxerre was coached by Jean-Marc Furlan. And for our listeners who don't know who is Jean-Marc Furlan, I sincerely hope that he's in Ligue next year so we can talk about it. He's basically a legend in France. He's been criticized for how well he wants his team to play football, and playing. I think it's pretty fun, ironic, romantic, you name it. When that Auxerre is going to play against Saint-Etienne, two coaches with completely opposite mentalities. The only issue I have with Auxerre is that if they do go up, which is great, they're going to go up with a few players that have always been great in Ligue 2 and have often disappointed in Ligue 1. And the main example of that is Gaëtan Charbonnier, who almost every season that he plays in Ligue 2, he's the leading goal scorer. And then when he goes into Ligue 1, he doesn't quite make it. It's going to be a 2-game relegation playoff. They're playing, if I'm not mistaken, the first game is on Wednesday. I'm going that right. Thursday night, sorry, so Friday morning here in Australia. And the second game is on Sunday night. So in Auxerre on Thursday night and in Saint-Etienne on Sunday night. 2 games that are worth watching, actually, to wrap up the season. Baptiste, you're called the classic. If there's a team that is classic in France, it's Auxerre. How good would it be for Ligue 1 to see them coming back in Ligue 1?
It's a household name, so it's always good to see them. I mean, it's two pretty important sides facing each other. Not the same mystique about Auxerre as for Saint-Etienne. Obviously, Saint-Etienne after Reims, the first great French European side, right? But Auxerre have had a ton of great players play for them. They were, the team defying the odds for and doing that extremely successfully for decades. They did the double in '96. They won French Cups under their own sort of Sir Alex Ferguson, right, under Giroud. And they used to develop a lot of players, the Djibril Cissé, Philippe Mixès, Boum Song, all those players. So I'm happy to see Auxerre back to contention. I mean, they punched above their weight for so long that I think their natural place is probably, in terms of the size of the club, unfortunately, if you're looking at it that way, they probably should be between lower end of Ligue 1 and top of Ligue 2, right? But it's still good to see them back there. It's a very old school club, old school stadium, small town. It's got that great feel to it, and like you said, with Jean-Marc Furlan, they have a manager who wants to play football the right way, and that's what they used to do under Giroud. They used to play football the right way, so it's exciting to see them back. And also, an iconic shirt, the all white with a little bit of blue, right? So iconic shirt, iconic team.
There might be the most accurate representation of what Farmers League mean to the outsider in Liga, with their what was their sponsor for the longest time was like the chicken on the shirt, the Poulet Loué. So but they're such an awesome club to bring back in Liga. That's going to be a very interesting two-legged game, and we'll talk about it next week, of course. There was another question by Dieter van Gort on his tweet. He asked about Mbappé, but he also asked which player from the relegated teams will play in Ligue next season, and which teams is the biggest overachiever and which team is the biggest underachiever in Ligue. I think if we start with the second question, the bigger underachiever, you can pick Lyon or Lille, and that's where you are. And the biggest overachiever, I think it's between Strasbourg and Nantes. Is that your impression as well, Baptiste?
Yeah, I think so. Lyon, we've talked about it before. Lyon, I can't believe they are where they are. You can understand why they got here, but it's still disappointing that they're there. And Lille, underwhelming, but not overly surprising. I think they lost Galtier. They were on a massive high last season. They brought an average manager in Jocelyn Gourvenec. The feel around the club isn't great. They don't have a lot of money available. It just sort of feels like the end of a cycle. So I'm not them finishing where they finished 10th today. Them finishing 10th didn't necessarily surprise me that much. It's still a little bit disappointing because you'd expect better, but not as overwhelmingly negative and disappointing as Lyon. And obviously I don't know whether we can call it underwhelming, or underachieving, but certainly Bordeaux finishing with the table with 91 goals conceded. I mean,
crazy.
The Gerard Lopez again strikes again. Good to see him not turn up for the last few games of the season as well. That's classy. But it's not only is it's not a surprise that they got relegated, but the manner, just the obvious lack of talent on the pitch, the lack of ideas, that was still so intense in a way. I don't think I've ever seen that. I mean, it was so amateurish at every level that I actually can't believe they've managed to have so many points in a way. And it's a sad story. So they're probably my underachievers. And for overachievers, I mean, you've mentioned the right ones. I mean, there's quite a few. Lens, Rennes, to a lesser extent Rennes, but still fourth is a good. I kind of also want to mention Clermont because
true.
No one gave them a chance at the start of the season to stay up, and they went a different direction to Saint-Etienne and Duprat, right? They went in there and said, we're just going to play the way we know how to play. We'll get battered in a few games, but we'll be in there. We'll be in there in most games, and they've played really well. They've been enthusiastic. They've been brave, and they've stuck by their manager, who plays his 33-year-old son, who'd never played Liga football before, plays in the center of the park. And I don't think anyone would recognize any of those players' names apart from Mohamed Bayo, maybe. And to be fair, the last one I just want to mention is Troyes as well.
Yeah.
Again, and maybe again because it's the last impression that I have from them. But fair play to Bruno Irles. I mean, he turned up a terrible soul patch, but turned up and when you look at how they played against PSG in the penultimate game of the season and the way that he turned things around, that's been super impressive, actually. So I think but a lot of good football this year. A lot of teams who've actually played well and kind of overachieved compared to what they originally wanted, I guess.
Yeah, it would have been a tough gig at Troyes for sure for Irles coming after Batless, who was already a very good coach and just didn't get the results. But yeah, Irles for his second stint in Ligue 1, he had a few games with Monaco back then. It was good to see that he could save Troyes, who is obviously part of the City Football Group, so they also kind of had to stay in Ligue 1, I think. The first part of the question from Dieter van Gort was which player from the relegated teams we think will stay in Ligue 1. We're going to start by Metz because when we go through Bordeaux, it's heartbreaking. The Metz players, Farid Boulaya, Pat Matarsar is already on his way to England, of course. Farid Boulaya, maybe. Didier Lamkelze had a nice little last of 6 months, but then outside that, and of course Alexandro Kija, who sometimes is a good keeper. Outside of that, most players, I think they are second half of Ligue 1, top of Ligue 2. Vincent Pajot, Ibrahim Agnan, Fabien Santonze, Dylan Brown, Nicolas de Préville, Opa Nguet, Fali Kandé. It's players that are either young and up and coming and maybe could make it, like Ibrahim Agnan, like Opa Nguet, or it's players that have always flirted anyway with relegation battles, and have always been there. It's a team that almost feels like they're where they're supposed to be. It would, if Farid Boulaya had been at the level he's been the last few seasons, maybe they're 15th. But if their top player isn't playing where they want it to be, then it's hard. Besides Boulaya, do you think any player will be picked up? Maybe Ukija.
Well, I think first of all, with Boulaya, he needs to have the right mindset. He needs to turn up, and that's been an issue with him, isn't it? So maybe he is at the level where he should be, considering his attitude is allegedly so poor. I think I do like Fabien Santonze. I think he's the one name on that list that I think could play at a better club. I feel like his rise was sort of interrupted with injury, which was a shame, because in the first part of the season, certainly in the second part of last season, he did feel a little bit like Jonathan Klaus light. So a similar style, getting a few goals, hogging that touchline, but also coming back for some random headed goals once in a while. So I think I could see him play. I could see him play at a higher club. I mean, Zeki Selik's been quite poor this season, surprisingly for Lille. I don't think it would be such a step down to have somebody like Santonze at a club like that.
Marseille was on Santonze last summer.
Yeah, so I think he's probably the one in that list who's who I would consider as potentially not top half. Well, I could see him at a side between 8th and 15th. Basically,
he's only 26 as well, so yeah, and he was at one point one of the best right back, like you say, close like last season. Bordeaux, you're wondering why this team is where they are, right? Yacine Adli, of course, is going to Milan. Who's the other one that's on loan? Timothée Pembele, of course, is going back to Paris. And then Benoit Costil is too old, but then it's Sekou Mara, Wang Guizhou, Jean Onana, Joshua Guilavogui, Anel Ahmedhodzic, Gideon Mensah, Jimmy Briand, who's a bit old, maybe Rémi Houdin. A couple of those players, Albert Ellis, a few of those players, of course, I think have the level for Ligue 1, and I think mainly Onana, Ellis, Guizhou, Ahmedhodzic, Ignatenko. It just didn't work out for them. Maybe because the other players are so far behind. And interestingly enough, Ahmedhodzic has come into the fold in January. But before that, the defense maybe was the issue. And the fact that Koscielny was A, not helped, B, vilified, has been one of their issues. But there is talent in that team. I didn't mention Sekou Mara. There is talent in that team. If they all want to stay together and be in Ligue 2, there's a chance they come back up straight away.
Yeah, I mean, like, context is so important. It sounds like it weighed on everyone at Bordeaux, because you take those players individually, and there is some talent there. I mean, Huang's had a decent season when you think about it. Sekou Mara looks quite exciting. He's a French under-21 international, scored 2 at the weekend. And I think Onana has some qualities. Albert Ellis had a good first half of the season. So I think you do have some talented players, but the atmosphere of the club was terrible. I think the managers were terrible. Nothing was working. The atmosphere was down. And they were also surrounded by some players that just didn't have the talent. I mean, I don't know where they found Mangas, and I know he scored at the weekend, but he is one of the worst fullbacks I think I've ever seen.
Fran Sergio was pretty bad as well. It's interesting though, because Fran Sergio was a mainstay at Braga. Braga, who's the team who then disqualifies Monaco this season. Same for Mangas. It was great.
But if you sign a 32-year-old centre midfield, who's only ever played in one league, that guy's got to be pretty amazing to make it work at a club that's struggling, and it wasn't going to be the case. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's it's more the frustration is more like it's interesting because when you read the list of players at Metz, that your initial reaction is like they are where they are. Actually, kind of doesn't matter which manager you put. The talent is maybe not there, and that's not such a harsh thing to say. Like it's difficult to stay up. With Bordeaux, it's like I don't understand how you can have a lineup of decent players and then playing that way. It's like every time I've seen them play, you just thought these people have never met each other before, and they have spent no time at the training ground, and they don't know what they're meant to do, and that's damning for everyone involved. And for me, there's a symbol of that club is Bayern Yang.
Mm-hmm.
27, 10 years ago, was starting in Ligue 1 for Caen and moved to AC Milan. He has done nothing in his career. He is not a leader. He doesn't have the talent level. He might do on occasions, but doesn't have it. And he was one of the alleged ringleaders of the players turning up for five-a-side football when they're not meant when they're not meant to do so.
Going to clubs.
Clubbing on the night of relegation. You're allowed in life. I don't always, I don't begrudge people going out, and actually maybe when you're having a tough time, you need something to clear your mind. But when this is the guy who wrote off like 2 Lamborghinis before the age of 20, there were rumors about his personal life on social media, has no work ethic. It's just, I think it says it all.
Yeah, exactly. The other players that I didn't mention, Gregerson, sorry, and Gilles Rosun and Enoch Kwateng as well. It was what it was, right? It was just a lot of players brought in. Some of them we knew were good, had been good, just not the right mix of player. Didn't find whoever was going to be in charge to lead the others. Whoever could be in charge, Koscielny, Costil, somehow were pushed away. It was wrong everywhere. Let's see, as I look at the list, I see more young players that I didn't say. Tom Lakou had an okay season for his age. Medji Zerkan, who's up and coming, unfortunately. Injuries have been on the way for him. It's just a shame. There's one player that I don't want to mention because I don't even know why he's there, but he was a defender at Lyon before, and now he's in Porto.
Sorry, he's the biggest symbol. Yeah, I was harsh on Bayern Yang, but Marcelo, why would you sign a 34-year-old centre back who, by all accounts, has been nothing short of abysmal and a terrible dressing room influence at his previous club? In what world is that a sensible option? But like you said, lack of talent. About how many people are there on loan? It's not. Sometimes football really isn't complicated. If you bring people for the short term, they might try hard, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be the same. It's not. They might be very professional. They might try hard, but when push comes to shove, they're not here next season, so it doesn't have the same impact.
They don't care. Jeter, you brought the ambience down with your question and with making us looking at which player could be in Ligue next season. The player that are going to be in Ligue next season will be the player from Toulouse FC and from Ajaccio AC, and we'll talk about those two teams. But it's actually some exciting projects coming from Toulouse, and it's always good to have a team from Corsica in Ligue 1 to bring a bit of spice to what our football is. Baptiste, thank you so much for this time and for this podcast. A little bit longer than usual, but there was a lot to talk about from the Mbappé drama that ended up well for Ligue 1 and French football in general, to Strasbourg and to Bordeaux, and Metz being relegated. unfortunately. Is there any more Le Classique pod coming out? How are we with the ranking of the best player to ever play in Premier League? Is Flamini number one yet?
Sadly not for Mathieu. He's too busy being a successful entrepreneur, I think, to really care about it. But no, we've recorded up to number 3. We just need to release 4 and 3, and then record 2 and 1. But I think I think people know who will be number 1 and 2. They might not know the order necessarily, but there are 2 names that come to mind. So it's but it's exciting. We're doing an episode for each of the top 5, and it's obviously great fun reminiscing about those players and their cultural impact that they had in the Premier League and in the UK. And that's maybe even the most fun part, rather than focusing on the football. It's how much of an impact they had.
You also had your debut at the Ligue 1 podcast Le Beau Jeu with Matt Pirot and Andy Scott and Robbie Thompson and Angus Toro. That was pretty awesome to listen to. Whoever listens to us, I'm sure, is also listening to the official podcast. How was that for you?
I mean, I was very grateful to be invited. It was an unbelievable experience. It was amazing to see. I don't have a commentator's voice, but you see Matt and Angus, and you start speak the way they speak. And they've got that wonderful commentator's voice. It's actually great to be involved. And there were absolutely lovely guys, very welcoming, and it's always great to talk French football with people who know their stuff, as it is here. Yeah.
Indeed. Thanks, Baptiste. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who's been listening to the podcast. They'll be, of course, released on our usual podcast platform, but also as a video, so you can see our faces when we talk about Mbappé and how we agree with each other on almost everything. Thank you, everyone. I'll talk to you next week. There'll definitely be another episode next week and for the whole of summer.